Hello and welcome to Total IELTS. Peter here, and in today's video I'll be looking at 6 ways to improve your listening score, specifically highlighting keywords in the questions, the use of paraphrase and synonyms in the recording, how to predict the answer, and IELTS use of distractors and signposting language, and finally how to stay focused during the listening test. So let's begin with highlighting the key words. Now at the start of the test in the paper-based and the CD test, you have time before the recording starts. So read the questions carefully and highlight the key words. In the paper-based test, you can highlight your keywords on the paper itself. Here, for example, question 22, main problem, laptop, slow, screen is small, or incorrect data. In the computer delivered test, it's also possible to highlight the keywords on the screen. Highlighting the keywords is an important start because it keeps you focused on the answer and it cuts out all the unnecessary information. So while you are listening, listen for the highlighted information only and don't try to understand everything you hear. After you've highlighted the keywords, you will usually not hear them in the recording. Instead, IELTS will use synonyms and paraphrase. Synonyms are words with similar meanings, and paraphrase are phrases, again, with similar meanings. Here, for example, in question 1, the highlighted keywords are original cars built, by hand, machines or robots, and the recording says the first vehicles were manufactured by workers operating on a moving production line, but these employees were gradually replaced by machines which were in turn replaced by robots. So the answer here is A, because the original cars were built by hand and the synonyms and paraphrase used were original cars, first vehicles, built, manufactured, and by hand by workers or employees. So after highlighting the keywords and phrases, don't listen for them specifically. You usually will not hear them. When you highlight them, think about synonyms and paraphrase for these keywords. Let's move on to predicting the answer. This is a very useful strategy, especially for written answers. As I said before, you do have time before the recording starts, so read the questions carefully, and there are 2 ways to predict the answer. First of all, think about the type of missing information, and second, think about the type of word. For the type of missing information, here is a typical Part 1 task. Number 1 is name and number 2 is address. So number 1 will be a surname and number 2 the name of a road. Be careful when spelling these with a capital letter at the beginning because they are both proper nouns. Next of all, you can think about the type of word. Here in question 21, the event is traditionally held on the last Sunday of October, so 21 is likely to be an adjective because it's followed by a noun, and the answer here is yearly. And in 22, the of taking part has risen this year to $5 per runner. So 22 is probably a noun or an adjective plus noun, because it's preceded by the and it describes how much it costs to enter the race. And the next one is the use of distractors. A distractor is when you hear a possible answer, but then it's changed to another. Maybe the speaker changes their mind, or maybe alternatives are presented. For example, here in question 1, what date will he leave? Now the first date you hear is when speaker B says 13 July. However, speaker A suggests that he leaves on the 12th or 11th, But speaker B clarifies and says he needs to leave on the 10th because of the family dinner. So the answer is the 10th, but there are also 3 distractors, 13, 12 and 11. So when it comes to distractors, listen carefully and be patient. Don't write down the first possible answer you hear. If you do and you need to change it, it's perfectly okay. Let's move on to the use of signposting language. Now, signposting words or phrases are used to guide the listener through each part of the recording. And these words and phrases have many functions. They can introduce a topic, finish a section of the talk, or begin a new one, and they can also be used to conclude. You will hear them in all parts of the test, but they are particularly popular in parts 2 and 4 because they are monologues where the speaker gives information about a topic. And here, the speaker will use a lot of signposting words and phrases. For example, first of all, I want to give you some background information. Okay, let's move on to the late 19th century. And finally, I'd like to talk about some future projects. Signposting guides you and keeps you focused as the recording moves on. And also, signposting words and phrases signal when you should move on to the next question. For example, okay, let's move on to. Another point is, when you hear this, move on to the next question. And finally, let's look at staying focused during the listening test. Sometimes during the test, students complain that they lost their place. That means they struggled to keep up with what was being said. The main reason for losing focus like this is that students spend too much time answering one question. When they're spending too much time, the recording, of course, has already moved on. And when they finally decided on the answer, they've lost their place in the recording and it's incredibly difficult to catch up. This can have a real negative effect on the overall band score. I've seen this type of scoring many times. Here the student has scored well in parts 1, 2 and 4, but in part 3 not so good. And when they were asked why not, they usually said, oh, I lost my place, or I spent too long on one answer and couldn't catch up. So don't spend too much time on one question. If you're not sure of the answer, leave it unanswered and move on. At the end of the paper-based test, you have 10 minutes transfer time, and the CD test, you have 2 minutes to answer any questions you haven't before, and they're always highlighted in a different color and shape so they're easy to find. Use this transfer time to answer any unanswered questions. If you can't remember what was said in the recording, make a guess. There's no minus points for incorrect answers.